Next time, if it happens again, just take him by the tie and pull him along and bring him on the radio with you.
No tie today. No tie today. We're at a building site, so no ties.
People need to realize there once was a day when a politician would never be caught dead without wearing a tie. And now, of course, that's gone, except for the formality of the House of Commons. And people don't realize that you have to wear a tie. It's a requirement, isn't it?
Yeah, you have to wear a tie and a jacket for men. Dress standards for women are perhaps left more open to interpretation. But for men to be able to speak, you have to have a tie, and to be able to vote, you have to be wearing a jacket.
Now, interestingly enough, too, people can go and sit in the gallery at the House of Commons and dress as they do, as perhaps a tourist might. But I had occasion one time being invited to sit in the Speaker's Gallery, and I had no idea. Speaker's Gallery is at the end of the House of Commons, facing the Speaker, in fact, and there's a reserved section. I show up, of course, without a tie, and I don't know if you know this, but you're required to wear a tie in the Speaker's Gallery. And I thought, oh, my goodness, I'm going to be turned away after coming all the way from Nova Scotia. Oh, not a problem. The clerk came rushing up to me with an armload of ties and said, pick one.
Well, you know what? Anytime you're up, or any listeners who are there and would, when we're sitting, of course, and would like a tour, we're always happy to help arrange that and be a part of it.
Does that include lunch?
I'll buy you lunch. Absolutely, Bill. Absolutely. You're there, I will buy you lunch.
Listen, you mentioned you're talking with your boss, and you're on the road, obviously traveling. So the election, really, to all intents and purposes, is on. Now, obviously, no writ has been dropped, and it's all superficial in a sense, but it's pretty clear what's going on. And the press releases have heated up. It turns out now, remember I was upset that you referred to carbon tax carney? Well, all the latest press releases come out with carbon tax, fill in the blanks. Everybody you mentioned in the press releases now is carbon tax somebody. And the leading contenders for the Liberal Party leadership, Carney, of course, and Miss Freeland, very likely the leading contenders, both of them have said they're not having anything anymore to do with the carbon tax. And one wonders, are you pounding a dead drum?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Here we are. I've had the pleasure of serving as our health critic on the Conservative side for 2 years now. And certainly we know clearly that both of those folks have supported the carbon tax, which has created an incredible cost of living crisis for Canadians. So continuing to illustrate to Canadians, we talk about the Ottawa bubble, but those of us who follow politics closely, I don't just follow it, I live it, but those who do obviously are aware of this. But many Canadians would not be aware of the fact that both Mr. Carney and Ms. Freeland would have supported the carbon tax throughout their tenures, and certainly taken every opportunity to defend the carbon tax, which has, and I think clearly punished every single Canadian in terms of cost of living. Around Cumberland-Colchester, I have the opportunity to visit many farmers, and their first statement to me, almost to a person, not every one of them, but almost to a person, is don't let anyone tell you different. Carbon tax increases our input costs significantly. So it's an incredibly important thing for Canadians who want to have more money in their pocket, and I think that we need to continue to illustrate that these folks have supported it all along. The only thing I'll say, and I don't mean to be contentious, but as you well know, as much as I'm here certainly in Mr. Poilievre's party, as all of you know, he's not my boss. The people who elect me are his boss, and I know you're saying it tongue-in-cheek, but I do think it important to say that. If I don't get reelected, if people don't want to vote for Stephen Ellis, then they're the boss of me. They get to kick me out if they so desire.
Indeed. I mean, that's the democratic process. But of course, he is the leader of the party. And one would believe that the members of the caucus are going to follow his lead. And certainly, where you are what they call a shadow cabinet minister, if you were named to the cabinet, there's a question of cabinet solidarity. And then, therefore, once again, whatever the leader says, the cabinet needs to follow, or you don't stay in the cabinet. And having said that, that's the case for Freeland, of course, too, is that she certainly did defend the policy that was the Prime Minister's policy, and then she walked away from the Prime Minister and the policy, and now she's looking to make a comeback saying, I don't like that policy. So attaching her to him when she was gone and he's gone now, all that kind of stuff. But you know what? Let's change.
I guess I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced of that, but I'll leave it. I'll leave it at that.
Well, she may very well, in her heart, think it's a wonderful policy, but she said, and I trust we'll find out more, that she's not going to pursue it. And therefore, it's not a question of you can't elect her, you'll end up with a carbon tax. Although the Liberals have been known once or twice or 3,000 times to say one thing and do another. But that let's not go there. What I think is really interesting, you mentioned about the threat of tariffs from Donald Trump. And, the man threatens all the time. It doesn't necessarily mean he's going to do something, but his threats have weight. And his threats have caused everybody to get jumpy and nervous, and the federal government planning how to respond and how to retaliate. It's interesting to note, and you must get a wry smile out of this, the Prime Minister has always been kind of hard to reach. You don't get the privilege of talking to him too often unless his back is to the wall. And now he's meeting every single week with the premiers across Canada.
It's incredible. I think part of the difficulty there, of course, is I don't know Mr. Trump. I've never met the man.
Lucky you.
I mean, as I said, be that as it may, you look at it, he's not going to want to negotiate with a lame duck prime minister. He knows that Mr. Trudeau is not going to be there to continue to negotiate or to set the agenda for the Canadian population, and therefore that's will and does present significant problems for us as a country that we don't have a leader in place. And certainly, we're ready to go back to work as Canada's Conservatives. We're ready to go back to Ottawa at any time. And as you know, the first opportunity that we have, hopefully will be a throne speech on the 27th of March. And if Mr. Singh holds true to his word, which, as you said, once, twice, maybe 3,000 times, he has not, but he has said that he will vote against any Liberal government, no matter who the leader is, at the first opportunity. So hopefully in March 28th, we'll be hearing about the next election.
And away we go. Now,
away we go.
Yeah, exactly. Having mentioned the fact that the Premier, or the Prime Minister rather, is meeting with the premiers, they got kind of a first ministers conference, but it's every single week, all about Donald Trump and what do we do about him, kind of thing. One wonders, of course, does your leader or does your party have any input in such a meeting?
Well, I mean, I can only speak for myself personally. I have not been invited to said meetings. There's been no talk about how healthcare could be part of it, which, as you well know, is certainly a big part of my background. So from my personal perspective, absolutely not.
But I'm thinking in terms of, having an election impending and the very likelihood, if not a possibility, of changing parties in power, shouldn't somebody from your party be in on the wings of those meetings? Because, like you say, come March, we could be seeing the beginning of the end of the Liberal government.
One of the interesting things is, Bill, is people would often suggest that Conservatives are perhaps crass in terms of things that we say and how we say them. But what I would say is that, in my experience with the NDPs and Liberals, they don't want us to be part of those conversations. Things that they've said to me and directed towards Pierre Poilievre in the House of Commons, which you can't hear because the Speaker turns off those microphones. The things that I'm privy to hearing are absolutely abhorrent. and they're embarrassing to the folks that say them and how they say them and the language they use. These folks don't want to have a conversation, and the conversations they have are unpleasant and mean-spirited, and that needs to change.
Well, like you say, come March, if Mr. Singh does what he says he's going to do, you will have finally achieved what you've been trying to do now for a couple of years, and that is to force an election based on your lack of confidence in the Prime Minister and the ruling Liberal Party. And by all accounts today, all the pundits, all the polls, all everything suggest that you're likely to become the government. And I say likely because there's no guarantee. I mean, I would have bet my last dollar that Mr. Trump wouldn't be president today, and I would have been wrong. So you never know.
No, until the last vote is counted, you don't know. And until that point, we'll continue to bring forward policies that are supportive of Canadians. Things we're talking about now, of course, is building new homes. We need to understand that new home buyers will have the GST removed on houses under $1 million. We know that we're going to incentivize municipalities to permit more housing, and we're going to sell off federal lands and unused buildings. That does affect Cumberland-Colchester as well, in the sense of the former RCMP Communications building and the Amherst Armories as well. So those are things that we'll continue to do, support Canadians so that they can have houses and they can afford to live in safe neighborhoods.
Let's close on a positive note, and appreciate you were able to come in.
I thought that was positive. That is positive.
It's relatively positive, but it's in the future. I want to talk about something we've measured already. You were very happy to promote the Nova Scotia Stampede. And just this week, there was an accounting came out about the impact the Stampede had, a financial impact the Stampede had, not just in Bible Hill, not just in Truro, not just in Colchester, but in the entire surrounding area. Several $1 million to the benefit, we would call it, say, to the service sector or the tourism sector, that people came and spent money. It's a very, very positive thing, and I think can only get bigger.
I agree with you, Bill. You know what? I'm happy when the folks came to me and said, "Hey, what do you think of this idea?" I certainly made it clear from the very beginning. I thought it's a great idea. It's helped to revitalize the harness racing industry with the new grandstand in Bible Hill as well. But as you mentioned, this is something that we can all be proud of and something we can all take part of. And the events, the tickets are on sale for the event coming up. It's going to be a week earlier in September of 2025. So I look forward to seeing people there, and I'll have my cowboy hat on, and we'll have some fun for a few days. So you should come over with yours on too, Bill.
Well, you know what? I had a cowboy hat some years ago, and something happened to it. I don't mean that it got lost or anything. It somehow shrank in the closet. It's like my suits. They all shrank in the closet.
Terrible that way, isn't it?
It really is, I got to tell you. Anyway, glad you were able to get through, and we're back on our regular every other Thursday event, so we'll talk with you again 2 weeks from now.